Hey everyone, it's Ryan here, coming at you from the farm. We're into one of these projects, and it's been a good project. There's really no way for me to show you this tank and this setup here on the ground like it is without probably splitting this video into two. It's just going to take too long. I'm not really a big fan of unboxing things on high speed and trying to show you everything in high speed, but if I don't, it'll just take too long to show you how the real process really went. I had to buy a ton of supplies from Menards because what I'm going to do is make with this fusion glue and some pipe and all this PVC and a few water fittings for garden hoses and a little pump that I got on Amazon. I'm going to try and take and make an automated water system, some better caging for my meat rabbits, some better hygiene stuff. I want to make it held up by brackets like these metal brackets. I want it tied together. I want shut-off valves in it, and I want to pump on it like this. I want it hosed up for a return. I want it to be able to go through deep cold up to negative 20 degrees and stay out of trouble. I don't want it freezing up. I want to make things cleaner for the rabbits. I want to make things better. My daughter Tabitha is a big support in this. She wants these rabbits better too, so I'm not dinking around with the wooden little cage carrier thing and trying to clean it out and trying to keep it nice. And yes, I could, go buy a cart of cages and stick them in the back corner of one of my barns and grow them in that and all that jazz too. And I'm just not going to do it. What I'm going to do is take my time over the course of several days. So you'll see I'm wearing different clothes at different times. And I'm going to assemble this thing and I'm going to make a loop system. So I'm going to take that 35-gallon water tank on the floor. I'm going to drop into it a heater that's made specifically for plastic tanks. It's a little bit oversized. I'm going to drop in there a Wi-Fi probed, a thermostat gauge so that I know and be alerted if it ever does try to freeze. I'm going to put the system on a pump so that it can recirculate that hot water. And I'm going to do that with basically a little aquarium pump. And I'm going to put that on a circuit in the barn, rewire it up so that it just goes on at about 36 degrees and only runs and circulates when it's cold. And I got to keep the pressure low enough so that I can use rabbit nipplers because that's what I want to use instead of bowls and cups because that can freeze. I'm going to try and insulate the pipe to the best of my ability, and I'm going to try and keep the rabbits from chewing on the pipe. And that means new cages and better cages. I also want to deal with the manure better. A rabbit manure is actually very good manure, but it's not always the easiest to capture, and it does make a mess and can make a stink. I also want to put them in an area where I have good ventilation and better fan systems because I got to deal with winter, but I also got to deal with summer. And in summer, I'm going to have to deal with heat. So I'm in my shop. I'm trying to put this PVC together. I got these nice pipe hangers that fit about 3/4-inch copper piping. They work really nice on this 1/2-inch piping PVC. I got a whole bunch of disconnects. Those couplers work really good for me taking it apart, especially if I ever have to change out a nippler. I know the nipplers are screwed in, but if you ever freeze a section or something goes bad, instead of taking the whole thing down, I only got to take sections out. And then I've also going to use these pipe clamps to clamp the two pipes together. So I'm going to have this thing hanging by the top return pipe. Then the two pipes will be clamped together in the middle. And then every piece can take apart by just undoing the unions. I think this is going to make it much more functional. I'm going to have this thing behind the cages, but I'm going to set the cages up so that I can tip the cages forward or pull the cages forward away from it, then get access to the water system if I need to. I'm also putting a drain on one end so I can clean it out if there's times during the year when the rabbits aren't in there, or there's times where I want to flush it. I've got to make this thing 12 feet long, folks, and I've got to make it land where the cages need the nipplers. So a lot of measuring and a lot of time went into this. I'm not kidding when I tell you I've probably got almost 30 hours into it, but I think it's going to be beneficial. You can see that I'm laying it all out here on the floor. I'm making sure the nipplers go in the right spot. I'm getting the pump on the end of it. I'm getting the return hose. I'm getting the electrical set up. I've already got a GCFI or GFCI, I can't remember which way you say that, in the barn, so this tank can be hooked to that. I've got a nice spigot on the end of the tank, so I got to do some work on the tank too. So just above the 30-gallon mark, I'm going to drill a hole. That will allow me access to put the temperature probe in. and the power cable for the heater in. I got one of these grommets that I can use from the hardware store. Time to drill a hole. Once I got this hole drilled, I put the grommet in. I can put the temperature sensor probe in it. I can put the heater inside it and then leave the cord to the outside. That's my solution there. As far as building a box to contain this blue water tub and then insulating that box and then gaining access to it at 4 or 5 feet off the ground, probably not going to happen. So I am going to build a stand that's the right height on the floor here that can hold this heavy water tank. So I'm overbuilding it a little bit because of the weight of the water, because 30 gallons of water is probably going to weigh 240 pounds. So I'm going to get that done, and then I'm going to get this thing up, and then I'm going to repurpose a horse blanket, and I'm going to drape that over the top of this and leave a hole for the center there where that cover is so that I can purposely fill it. I think that'll work about the best. So that's at least what I'm doing in that end of the world. So as you can see here, I've pretty much got this thing going on assembly. It's just basically 2x4s, plywood, wood screws, so forth, and I'm getting the thing kind of built up here. Tabitha's trying to help me the best she can with a lot of this stuff, but sometimes I just had to think it through and kind of work on it on my own. But an extra set of hands never hurts, right? So once I have this water tank in place, once I have the horse blanket situated on top, where I've got access to the black cover for filling it with water, once I have the Wi-Fi device in it and the heater in it, pretty much that part's done. Then it's just a matter of me hooking up the PVC connections to it to make it function the way I'd like. I did strap down the water tank. I'll show you that here in a second. And I did do some trial fitting to make sure I had the right height, and I made it so that I could trim the bottom legs if I needed to. It's important I have the cages at the right height too, so that the kids can access them better for cleaning and so forth. So basically the way this system is going to work, again, there's a heater in the bottom of this tank. There's a circulation pump outside the tank that kicks on at 32 degrees, roughly 36, I think. And it runs until it gets to like 40 or whatever it is. And that's going to circulate the hot water in the pipe. The pipe has got nipplers on it, not bowls, which hopefully help them from freezing up. I'm going to insulate the outside of the pipe to the best of my ability. I've got a drain on one end, and I'm keeping it a little bit at an angle. The nipplers will stick into the cages, but the cages will be preventing the rabbits, hopefully, from getting at the insulation and wrecking the piping system. The cages will be hanging. The water system will be hanging, which will allow me to put a manure catch system underneath, which is what I want. So at this point, I've put up a couple lights. I think I've shown that in a previous video, a little bit of the work I was doing. I'm using UV bulbs in them because I want to do that for the rabbits, just because they're not going to get as much light as I'd like in the winter months. In the summer, we take them out a lot. It won't be a problem. But right now, I'm putting in the hangers that are going to hang this pipeline system, and I'm putting up the hangers that are going to hang the cage system. Just a lot of math. It's not the hardest thing in the world to do, but it's a lot of tape measures, a lot of up and down on the ladder. And of course, it's freaking 5 degrees when I'm doing this part of the project. Why it can never be warm, I don't know what to say. Welcome to Minnesota. Sometimes the only time I have to do these projects is in the winter, because that's when we don't have other crops and things that are demanding my attention. So that's the way it's got to go. So Tabitha and I are bucking it out in here. We're getting it done. The pipeline is somewhat PVC glued together with that fusion glue. I really like that because it's a one-step glue, and hey, we're not doing this for some, house where you got to use two-step primer. And I'm going to kind of put it together, and then I take it apart a couple times and put it back together, just because fitting it was its own challenge. But I got it where I wanted eventually. So again, I'm using nice strong chain. I'm hanging it down from the ceiling. I'm leaving it so I can adjust it down the road if I want. So I've got a little extra chain. I've got nice eye hooks up into the I-beams up here, and things are actually coming together quite well. Things that are left at this point is I still got to assemble the cages. I still got to assemble the hay feeders. I got to get some decent flooring in. I still got to design the manure catch system. So I've got all that done when I'm releasing this video so that you can watch it and part 1, part 2 if you want. So I'm releasing kind of both videos at the same time, but just got so long to show, even sped up like this. I tried editing parts out, but I wanted people to really get the feel of how I put it together so that if they wanted to try it themselves, they could have a shot at it. Because, you know, buying 1/2-inch PVC and all these 1/2-inch couplers, well, that's easy. Finding yourself some of these, you know, hangers and stuff at like a Menards or Home Depot, you probably can do. But kind of figuring out how to get both systems to float so you can pull the cages forward when you want, that's a little bit more tricky. And then figuring out how to design an area where, you know, you can remove the manure catch system at the bottom, completely clean it out and put it back in. Well, that's its own challenge too. So check out the next video. It's been released. I appreciate you watching. You'll see the conclusion here of how the rabbit house, the automatic water, the hanging the cages, the rabbit manure catch system all came together, folks. Sorry again, I had to split it in two, but it's a lot of video to show, and I want to make sure I get as much of it out as I can so you can really appreciate the work and effort we went through to make this better for our rabbits. Thanks.